I think that overall TSM is actually not that good of a team. I feel like that our mid and late game is superior.
NA is just greater than EU. Now it's a good time to like settle it for once.
Never look back. All by the TSM are there, and there's a quadra kill for Bjergsen.
Soren, you stole my penta? Are you trolling?
Now they're charging forward on the front line. Go Ramsey gets a massive knock, and they're able to clean house. Nowhere to the west, here do it, taking out TSM. Unicorns of love. Who else to hand them their first loss?
We wanted to keep the tradition of UOL beating TSM.
Franchise history, I guess, TSM loses to Unicorns, so it's this time we'll make it back.
Welcome to the final here at Rift Rivals 2017. TSM and the Unicorns of Love have earned the right to represent their region, and tonight they will settle the score in this fight between the NA and EU LCS. A lot of fans for both teams showing up at the studio today, as well as the Unicorns of Love. Who is that man in playing? I don't know who that is. And there is Exile taking to the stage. A big day for him. He wants to turn some heads and show that he is worthy of the title, and so does Doublelift, of course. Maybe he will be able to beat the Unicorns of Love with this TSM lineup. Good evening, everyone. I'm Eve, Shock supporter, joined here by Azale, Isaac, Cummings, Bentley, something like that, Andrew Vediusday, and Joshua Jat Leesman. A good desk and a good representation of both EU and NA, because if we take a look back on the results of the group stage and the past couple of days, North America was reigning supreme. 12 wins there and only 6 wins for the European teams. TSM's the best, Jat.
As expected, I mean, the record of the last year and a half was, what, 7-1 for North America? So 12-6, underperforming, one would say. Everything else done.
Maybe
no, this was surprising.
Getting better, you know? Maybe they're just finally being able to bring it to our North American overlords. But have to give credit to North America. They really have been stepping up this tournament. And some might consider EU to be a little bit underwhelming. But to me, I feel like that they've been playing how they were during the regular season of the EU LCS. And now they've just been exposed.
So they haven't been underperforming. They've just been figured out by the North American teams. And Azale, not just TSM, but even Phoenix One, who not a lot of people had expected a lot from, really carried their weight.
Yeah, they did. I think that a lot of these teams are showing some development, you know, bringing in some new young players. Obviously, a lot of hype around Mike Young, but the rest of the team played very well, too. It was a great event, I think, for Ryu, for Aero, for really the whole team.
And it's going to be a great final. We've got an action-filled best of 5 coming your way today between TSM and the Unicorns of Love. And remember that we also have a bot lane focus stream with Freak, Sven, and X Special. So be sure to check that out on watch.lolesports.com. If we had to summarize what we will see on that stream, what would it be?
Tier list for 3 hours.
Tier list? Well, that would actually be golden. But it will be very interesting indeed. And of course, we also want to know which plays you think deserve some time in the spotlight. Head over to Twitter and send us your big plays of the week at LOL Esports using the hashtag #RiftRivals2017. And I think the two teams representing in the finals, they carry a lot of those big plays, UOL and TSM.
Yeah, I mean, I think XL has had a lot of lowlights in lane, but outside of lane,
why you got to bring it up?
Some pretty sick plays. I mean, you know, by the Baron fight, like against TSM last time, Visit Chachi and Exile with the Gnar Vladimir combo, like that was nuts.
But Bjergsen, that man, he's made a lot of solo plays himself. The game versus G2, the game versus UOL, like there have been a lot of impressive performances, and who can forget the legend Mike Young?
For sure, and there we also see the trophy that the two teams are fighting for. So we're going to take a closer look at today's matchup. The Unicorns of Love from EULCS are taking on TSM, where we see some highlights from the NA LCS champions, in this case over Fnatic. They had a 5-0 win streak, or well, actually 3 games in a row, that then got broken by the Unicorns of Love. So we can safely say they have been the best team in the group stage, but why exactly were they so good?
Yeah, well, I think one thing is the game they've been talking all split about trying to win with multiple styles. We actually got to see at Rift Rivals. They won twice with Galio mid, carrying through different lanes, but then were also still able to carry through mid lane with Syndra or Cassiopeia. So they were jack of all trades, but also pretty good at those trades at Rift Rivals.
That is also reflected if we look at the stats breakdown. We've been keeping an eye on EU versus NA in general, but if we look at TSM versus the Unicorns of Love, we do see that in terms of getting the early leads, getting the leads in general, getting the objectives and snowballing, TSM has been on point, Azael. And is this reminding you kind of when TSM was at their best form last year?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think they're not quite there yet, you know, not back to that Worlds form, but they have had massive improvements throughout the split, and I think this is the best form that they have been on throughout this split, so they're working towards that, and they're going to try to peak for Worlds.
On stats-wise, Unicorns of Love, they don't look very convincing. They're Vedius, but they've won a couple of games. They're in the final, so what have they been doing well?
Well, what we have been seeing is that when they are able to get themselves some comfort picks and they're able to play their style, that is when they really flourish. The fact that if they can have an even laning phase, if they don't fall too far behind during the early game like we saw against Cloud9, that is where this Unicorns of Love squad really can challenge some of the best from the North American teams.
Yeah, and their team fighting has to be pretty spectacular when they've gotten 2 of the 18 dragons in their games with an 11% Drake percentage. So they have lacked at a lot of things, but they have excelled and over-indexed on team fighting in late game, which has brought them some success.
A couple of matchups that we want to look at. We have to look at the mid lane. We know that Exile has been hit or miss actually during the entire summer split and also in this tournament. He's going up against a very strong mid laner in Bjergsen. How much do we think Bjergsen is going to be able to exploit that mid lane?
I mean, honestly, I think he's going to be able to exploit it pretty heavily. I think that we've seen Exile struggle against pretty much everyone in this tournament. He's been struggling in the summer split. Bjergsen has been dominant, and I expect to see more of that. Exile needs to kind of almost accept the fact that he's going to lose lane, try to do it gracefully.
Yeah, and you see the 11 ISO deaths, which is 6th of 6. It's actually last place. It's a very polite way of saying it. That is a ton of times to die isolated
and
in mid lane.
5th isn't even close. Like, he has like more than double, I think, the next person.
And that is very true, right? And the reality is, like, you can't sugarcoat it. Bjergsen has by far and away been outperforming Exile on an individual level, but when it comes to a team basis, Exile has been able to step up when it counts. Like when he's able to get things like the Vladimir, when he gets champions like Cassin, he can have good performances, but Bjergsen is still going to be the man that I'm looking towards to really be that big playmaker that can outshine Exile.
And sadly for the Unicorns of Love, Exile has been part of that gold deficit that they rack up. They haven't had a single gold lead at 20 minutes in the tournament, but if we look at the top lane for them, Chachi is someone who is significantly ahead of his opponents in those games and has a good matchup versus Hanser here, so will that be able to tilt the matchup?
I think it could very well do. I'm so happy as a European fan to see Chachi be more consistent at this tournament because there are a lot of question marks around how will he be able to perform. And so far, he is ranked at the top for all top laners, and he's looking like one of, if not the best, at this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, he was the Spring Split MVP in Europe. I think he has been the best top laner in this tournament. I think his Gnar specifically has also been the standout champion for him. It's fairly new in the new meta here as far as it just getting buffed on patch 7.13. I think he has the best command over it, and if he can get Gnar in multiple games, I think that's one of UOL's best chances of winning.
We do have to remember, though, Hanser was actually able to solo kill him on the Kled against that Gnar, so Hanser still certainly can hold his own, but Visit Chachi, I think, definitely has the edge from how he's performed this tournament.
If we take anything or everything rather into consideration, TSM seems to be the more well-rounded team that is able to have the objective control and the macro control, but Unicorns of Love have great team fighting. What does that make you think about how the final's gonna go? Who are you gonna give it to?
I think it's pretty heavily favored for TSM. I'm looking at them for a 3-1. I think the fact that everyone knows that they're looking for this late game team fight style from UOL, TSM can also draft for late game team fighting. And if you're falling massively behind at the start of every game, you're not going to be very successful in the later team fights.
Yeah, my brain has to say TSM, but my heart is going towards the Unicorns of Love. These guys, they always bring something special out. I don't want to call it cheese because it's so part of their style. And I think that they can bring out some unique picks and just get to those late game fights that could very well turn around. Now I'm going to give it 3-2 to the Unicorns.
I think the group stage told us a lot. I'm going to go TSM 3-1.
We'll see what happens, I hope, for some explosive matches. It is time to kick off the deciding fight here between the NA and EU LCS. But before we get into game, Biofrost tells us what a win here would mean for TSM.
You know, I don't remember the last time NA has won anything, so if we could win something, it would mean a lot, at least to the NA fans. And you know, coming into this tournament, people were like, okay, there's a real chance that, you know, in group stages, NA is just going to do really poorly because, first of all, they're flying to Europe and they're going to be jet lagged. And, you know, that's honestly not the case, but I'm still jet lagged. But, yeah, it's going to be really important for us to win this tournament just to show that, you know, NA, we're pushovers.
Well, NA showed up in the group stage. Let's see if they can do it in the final. Good evening, everybody. I'm Trevor Quickshot Henry, joined in the final by Sam Kobe Hart McKenzie and Mod important official. Gentlemen, NA versus EU, this is for all the marbles, for all the bragging rights.
Exactly. I mean, even though the group stages, North America did well, it all comes down to this.
I'm pretty sure it's just one BO5, right?
Oh, one BO5, that's it. Let's take a look at the players fighting in that BO5. Starting on the blue side, it is the Unicorns of Love. Team Solomid, put them there. Visit Chachi in the top lane, Xerxes roaming the jungle, Exile in the mid lane, Samix and Hilly 80 carry support, and the coach behind them, Sheepy.
And this is the best performing European team here at Rift Rivals. I actually think Unicorns of Love have been able to kind of play their own style. They've actually showed that it's successful in some of the games. Yes, some weaknesses in the early game, but I think actually they have something they can bring here.
Well, let's see if they can. Their opponents who are trying to stop that Deficio. TSM with Hornsu in the top lane, Sven Skeren in the jungle, Bjergsen in the mid lane, Double Lift and Biofrost, 80 carry and support, and their coach, Path. Heavy favorites, heavy expectations based on the group stage performances, Kobe, and they've picked red side. So what does this mean setting us up for picks and bans?
So picks and bans, looking at it, we were definitely of the opinion that both of the teams are going to gravitate, especially in game number 1, towards these team fighting compositions, you know, some heavy CC, have those engagements. And I feel like the beginning of the match is kind of a game of chicken for, you know, whoever is going to back away from the 5-on-5 mid game at like 20 minutes first is going to come out on the losing side.
Also looking at the pick and ban phase, I feel like Unicorns of Love have some key picks that you really want to target, where TSM is very well-rounded. You don't have to ban anything specifically. Maybe a Syndra ban could come in, but you look at that Gnar from Visichachi, Gragas from Xerxes, like some of these really big picks that TSM could technically just ban away here on red side.
And the key is, I think they should attack that front line rather than, the scaling back line, right? You know, the team fight champions maybe of Exile or the Twitch of Samix there, much more, successful in attacking the Gnar and the Gragas, as you said.
I really like this Galio ban here from Unicorns of Love because it actually allows them to pick Syndra if they want it here on this red side or blue side. TSM, obviously, you got to ban Zach Caitlyn. Samox is a Caitlyn player. He would have first picked it if it was open.
And we've seen EU teams have no idea how to deal with NA mid Galio. This group stage, there are only 2 champions that have featured 100% pick and ban ratio this tournament so far. Zach and Caitlyn, and they're the 2 bans from TSM.
Yeah, the thing is with the Galio ban as well, it does take that kind of option away from TSM, but Double Lift has said, this team has always defaulted back to Bjergsen on a high DPS AP mage from the mid lane, Double Lift on a scaling AD champion. He said that's what they'll default to when the games matter, when it's crunch time.
And I have to disagree with the Shen ban here. I think in a best of 5, you can actually leave it open and see if Chachi still wants to play it. I think the Gragas has been way more impactful for the Unicorns of Love, and obviously they're trading it right now for the Gnar, but also things like Thresh would have been open.
Yeah, we were actually having a pretty long discussion on what was more important to Unicorns, the Gragas or the Gnar. And in the end, because there have been some successful answers to Gnar on the top side, and I think there still are some that we haven't even seen yet, possible pullouts, I think the Gragas really good first pick there.
So Unicorns of Love do not go for their mid laner here, meaning Bjergsen would have the option to go for like a Syndra and then remove things like that Vladimir from Exile to really dominate the mid lane for TSM.
But what they do go for is incredible hard engage here. So Unicorns, they are going to stick to that style. And if they do hit that point in the game where they want a team fight, Rakan is the guy to get it for you.
I mean, they had these champions against TSM last time where despite some issues in the early game, they got to that mid-game stage, they got to these big team fights and they actually executed them very well.
Of course, Double Lift yesterday, some praise for Samix and Hillisang, saying that he wasn't expecting them to perform to the level that they have. Phase 1 is completed. It's a Braum lock-in for Biofrost.
So last time TSM, also in the first game TSM played Unicorns of Love, we also saw the Braum come in early against the Zyra Rakan, and then Lucian was actually the pick for Double Lift just to get some mobility on the AD carry against all that hard engage. Might be the same here when they're actually saving that. Unicorns of Love, though, we're still also looking at that mid laner.
Yeah, and the thing is with that Lucian pick, I do like it for the lane phase, at least, before Rakan is using flash combo, with the quickness and into the W, because you can just dash out of the knockup. However, once you get to the mid game, where Rakan is start using his flash to actually get those things off, then the mobility doesn't even matter, and he can still find the engages usually.
Well, we're jumping into phase 2, gentlemen. Top lane is already locked in for Hornsa, so Chachi, Galio's banned away, Gnar's picked. He's run Irelia once this tournament, and we'll have to see what else he decides to play and whether he's going to do something a bit interesting.
Yeah, and the problem with those interesting, answers, almost all of the, 1v1 winning champions for Gnar in the top side or matchups into Gnar don't perform very well in the team fights. And Gnar still performs in the team fights even against, if you lost the lane to something like an Aurelia or a Riven.
TSM actually banned Syndra on their own. Now, Exile in the past used to play her, but he wasn't like a huge, famous Syndra player in Europe. He was always much more about the Vladimirs and the Kassadins. So it's actually a very interesting ban here, obviously showing that TSM have something very specific in mind for the first pick here in the second phase, and they don't want to see Unicorns take the Syndra.
Or they could also, TSM could save the mid lane pick here for last pick for Bjergsen. He does have things like Zillion, that you don't want to early pick.
That's why, again, you can go for AD carry now, save counter pick for him, and maybe they didn't feel they had a good answer to a potential Syndra. Kassadin being banned away by the Unicorns in case they want to play LeBlanc, then Kassadin won't be the answer from Bjergsen. But now you banned the Kassadin, and well, then TSM just takes the LeBlanc instead.
And that means AD carries all that's left for Double Lift. We'll see what it decides to lock in. Unicorns of Love have to confirm their solo laners now. What's it going to be,
I was about to say Ryze here. As much as it hurts me to say that Ryze might be the answer, it is still a fine matchup against LeBlanc.
How did the Ryze go last time? I'll tell you, 0-8-4. It was a painful group stage. Unicorns of Love have a few seconds left.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of confidence in this pick for Exile, but he has stuck to it. You have to give him that at least.
Yeah. He's committing. So top lane we're looking at right now for Chachi, or of course jungle, you can still put the Gragas top. And that seems to be what Unicorns wants to do here. This also means now you have a jungler that's not really going to help Exile too much in the mid lane. So if he's under pressure against a LeBlanc Kha'Zix, he's kind of left alone.
But I see scaling, I see team fight, I see quintessential Unicorns.
Yeah, it kind of is there. The scaling thing has me a little bit worried, just because maybe on the damage side, it won't quite be there as much. But the Ivern does bring so much protection that the Xayah, at least win that matchup, should probably be fine.
See Ashe coming in here for Double Lift. Has actually been very successful on this champion during the tournament, and I think it's a good champion against Unicorns of Love as well, where oftentimes you can actually catch them a little bit out of position, and using the arrow as the engage tool to then set up the rest of the team has worked for TSM before.
Yeah, and even though Double Lift, last time you saw it, you're like, oh my god, he hit like 6 arrows from lane phase over to mid lane. You don't even have to bank on that when you're taking this Ashe. It is more about the mid game and those engages, but the arrows towards mid and that extra pressure on mid is definitely a nice touch. And I think TSM will be going again with quite a few visits towards that mid lane.
Exactly, yeah, I almost feel bad now for Exile because he's going to be under a lot of pressure. Top lane with the Gragas coming in for Chachi, that's trying to be more of a safe lane for Unicorns of Love. And the Ivern, it is a bit hard for him to set up the same kind of camp we can see from other junglers.
Exactly. The Ivern, his protection around mid lane would be much more coming in to shield and, get vision, not really about turning around any sort of pressure. So even if Xerxes, does kind of hover around that mid lane, they're going to have their hands full.
I actually think also TSM are just very happy to see the Kassadin being banned by Unicorns. They're like, oh, you want LeBlanc and you ban the counter? Well, we just take LeBlanc now.
It did seem like they had a plan here for the last pick, and then as soon as they saw Kassadin ban, they're like, oh, never mind, we will take the LeBlanc, thank you.
Well, we'll find out who's going to perform better in game. You guys saw the team compositions. You know how to vote on Twitter. North America is leading the fan vote at the moment, and they're leading the expectation as we load up for Rift Rivals Finals. North America versus Europe. TSM taking on the Unicorns of Love. The Love Hurts crew doing battle with the TSM fans here in Berlin, Germany. It's all for bragging rights.
Let's see, first game here, Unicorns of Love. With a lot of the same champions we've seen during the tournament. We've seen a lot of Xayah Rakan from Samex and Hylissang in the bottom lane. Of course, the Exile Ryze once again, despite some of the issues with it. He actually did win one game. Let's see, mid lane. They're all spamming recall. Chachi, though, checking first.
I really do like, especially when you have Ivern, after the nerfs, if you're having that champion on your team going for these early invades to get some wards down, because especially against someone like Kha'Zix who can get early kills on Ivern if you mess up your route, if you go for one of these invades, the low health that Ivern actually gets now because the channeling camps take so much more, can be dangerous in these isolated situations. And Svenskeren, as we already saw yesterday, had a very successful game on Kazakhs when snowballing.
Yeah, that's what he's going to try to do this game. If anybody wants to check out Freak, X-Special, and Sven, taking a look at the bot lane specifically. This is, of course, the Zyra Khan into Ash Brom. Head over to watch.lolesports.com, and you'll see the stream on the drop-down. It's not going to be tier lists all day like Jat alluded to. Although that
Probably
may
gonna
feature,
get mentioned a few
that
times.
may feature, I'm sure. We've talked about Svenskeren and Xerxes in that matchup. Let's talk about some of the other lanes now. Chachi going to be under a little bit of pressure from this mini-Gnar, at least early on, I feel like.
I mean, the thing about Gragas is before the first base, yes, you can get pushed down and the trades are not too easy for you, but then you go back to base and either you get like a Dark Seal, you start getting towards your Ninja Tappy, you're going to get, some armor early on, and then you're actually going to be fine in the lane, and it's just so much more about joining your team, which of course, with Chachi, you kind of see a bit of both. Sometimes you see the carries where he wants to be the guy who split pushes, other times he just picks for the team, so it's one of the good things about him as a player.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that when you are running Ivern, you don't have a tremendous amount of that early pressure coming from the jungle as well. So, the threat of that extra damage to help out in that top lane matchup and give you that extra little bit of threat isn't quite there. Ivern, especially now, does like to, go for those more full clears.
And what's so interesting about these two teams is just how different they've actually looked in terms of play style. With TSM, we've seen very good 1 to 20 minutes with like pressure around Bjergsen, good vision control, unleashing the support as well to roam early on, and they've actually been very clean.
The other thing about that and why they've looked so clean, oh, never mind.
Oh, double a very early flash there. Did not want to get caught up by the entrance.
Maybe scared that Xerxes could have been down there, otherwise you normally wouldn't flash.
Yeah, I was about to say, the other reason, why they have looked so clean is because they have really done a good job at quickly identifying their points of the map where they have an advantage, and then accentuating that, sending jungle pressure down there, sending roams down there from other people. But Double F there, you could tell, respecting that they had zero vision and the possibility that Ivern could have been there.
Funny enough, though, with the Unicorns of Love and their playstyle, we don't normally see them snowball the laning phase. We don't normally see Xerxes just spam ganking. We've actually only seen it on like Rek'Sai specifically, a champion he's not used this tournament. So it's been, of course, much more about late game team fighting. They tend to fall behind and then they have to claw their way back in and hope that the enemy team maybe doesn't set up a Baron properly or they push the mid lane too many times.
Well, let's see whether or not UOL can stay even instead of losing the early game. They've got a couple of challenges ahead of them if they want to make that happen. Because if UOL do go into the mid game on an even footing, this is a team composition that could do exceptionally well in those 5v5s.
Yeah, things like Ivern does extremely well against LeBlanc because she goes in, wants to poke that one target. Well, he has a shield from Ivern and that damage is not really relevant, and suddenly Bjergsen can't really carry a late game team fight. You do see right now some of that early warding we mentioned. They actually do spot Ivern on the way. Bjergsen is hovering to the top side, and a lot of praise to TSM in the early vision.
All right, Rune Prison comes out. Trigger Seed flashed away from. Not done yet! Bjergsen gives up first blood to Exile!
That was not supposed to happen. He even saw Xerxes near that Raptor camp, and I think he just disrespected the CC.
Yeah, where's the early flash there? Unicorns of Love are the ones that get this early advantage, and they get first blood.
Such a good start suddenly for Exile on Rise, also for the confidence in that mid lane against Bjergsen.
All right, a little bit of poke in this bottom lane. Nothing really follows after.
But even like Bjergsen could just walk towards the top lane and he would have been fine too.
Yeah, we saw completely different reactions. Double Lift in the previous, move down bottom, very quick with his flash, respecting the fact that Ivern could have been there. But here, Bjergsen, he gets hit with the Rune Prison, and even though he flashes away after that, no go there, goes down.
And he's going to be mad about that one, knowing how easily he could actually survive. Xerxes will find Svenskeren, or maybe the other way around, but he's one level down currently on the Ivern. Svenskeren still waiting around. He didn't get spotted.
Now we'll find out how well they handle themselves as TSM still even on gold. Not a big difference in that first blood yet. UOL need to try snowball that. See if they can punish those flashless targets of TSM again.
I mean, definitely an option. Otherwise, again, if you are Unicorns, you're happy just staying even right now and just continue scaling with the Ivern. You didn't have to use any summoners before from your mid laner. Only Xerxes used his flash. So Exile is still safe, like barrier and flash available.
I want to talk a little bit more about this matchup, Exile and Bjergsen. Let's take a look at their CSD, jungle proximity, and we've talked a lot about Exile this tournament, but as it stands, it's really been Bjergsen heavily favored. You can see some of those stats on your screen. The biggest problem for Exile is those isolated deaths. He keeps getting ganked and shut down alone.
And he's not isolated anymore. That was the big change, right, that Unicorns made. And we saw it yesterday as well. Xerxes made a lot of counter ganks yesterday. Today, he's being much more proactive and obviously went to apply that pressure first. Down bottom lane, though. Bio going in.
Well, let's see what Svenskeren can do. Defensive hop away by Helisang. Nobody's down yet. Bio's down to 150 HP, and the Unbreakable blocking it out. Samux still untouched, continues to chase. And TSM, the gank fails.
Very nice answer here from the Unicorns of Love. When they played against TSM last time, 2 days ago, they actually lost a lot of kills early on. Svenskeren found openings with these ganks here. So far, he's not been able to get anything. Xerxes will also try to steal his Raptors, but they're not there.
It's okay. Get a ward down. That's almost as good as stealing them. Get that extra vision.
Almost as good.
Honestly, though, I really do want to commend that bottom lane play there from the Unicorns of Love. They are able to output a tremendous amount of damage while evading the attacks. You know, they use the extra mobility there of the Rakan. Meanwhile, though, mid lane, we're going to have another story here. Will they meet up, though?
Yeah, but look, the support on both sides. First target is Bjergsen. He's already dashed away. Xerxes was waiting in the wings, and it seems like UOL read that play or responded in the same way.
Yeah, same for TSM here. I like the reactions on both sides. Bjergsen saves, of course, his ulti to get another dash in case he needs it to get further away. Of course, Helisang trying to predict the distortion back as well from Bjergsen. No one dies in the end. Lane swap from Unicorns.
And this is the difference, you know, aftermath, right? After that mid lane play. So often, actually multiple European teams have been going for this super early lane swap to try and push down this turret. The North American answer has been to send support up there to try and help out with the defense, but Vile is on the bottom side, so it's not going to be the case here.
All right, Hornser gets knocked up into the air. Svenskeren's around for support. Hilly's busy tanking. Great barrel from Vizicachi, but the damage is coming down from Samux. He tanks the tower. Taste of Fear comes out. Svenskeren gets it back.
Coordination a little bit off there from the Unicorns of Love. It didn't actually seem like everyone wanted to go for that dive instantly. Hansa, he stayed alive, and then the quick turnaround, Samux dying and using Flash.
Yeah, there were a couple moments where people on both teams were unsure about what the call was for this dive, because watch it, you know, Hanser has a bit of a different idea than Svenskeren. He's going super aggressive right up under the turret, and initially, all of Unicorns are on it. They had the same idea. Hillsang is tanking, but then Hillsang goes out of turret aggro. He could have tanked one more. Samux takes it up. Here comes an arrow towards mid lane, though.
Manages to connect. How much damage does Sven Bjergsen have? Exile's gonna get shut down. Winter's Bite comes out, and Bjergsen takes down Exile.
Double lift! Are you kidding? Look at the pink wards through the river. There actually is one for Unicorns of Love that the arrow did travel over there in the pixel brush, but double lift does it again from the bottom lane, just continually sniping those mid laners.
So important here for TSM. 2 quick kills after Unicorns actually set up the lane swap, and they were far ahead in terms of the tempo for the first tower. But then that dive went wrong, and then suddenly an arrow in the mid lane. Exile didn't see it in time, so he didn't flash it. And then suddenly 2 kills and Mountain Drake for TSM.
Well, Team Solomid pick up the first dragon. They've managed to do so in 2/3 of their game so far. Secure yet another one. Important to note that UOL have only picked up 2 dragons this entire tournament so far. Let's see if they can get their hands on that objective.
It's because the dragon is not in the mid lane.
Oh, there we go. Okay. You can't get it when you're ramming down.
Update for next season, maybe?
With the dragon mid lane, Unicorns win Worlds.
Honestly, though, after that first swap failed, it's so much easier for TSM to answer now. You can tell Unicorn's not even going to extend here on the top side. They give up on that push very quickly. They don't want to go toe-to-toe anymore. Swap back down to bottom.
Right, and you said before, Kobe, how we've seen the European teams with different lane swaps. We've now seen some of them work, and they actually managed to get like a pretty good advantage with first tower blood. We've also seen them backfire now, and then suddenly they actually don't really excel in terms of getting this quick gold, and they have to slow down the game a lot. Helisang, he was hiding behind. Backs away, though.
Yeah, and Svenskeren's actually invading red quadrant of that jungle without any Unicorn's vision.
Decent sidestep from Exile. Ends up trading, coming off a little worse for wear into the minion wave, but Svenskeren and the rest of TSM making the way. I also see Enchanted Crystal Arrows up for double lift. Does the American sniper land another shot? Not this time.
Well, they saw several of the members of TSM in this war over that curved bush. So they knew that there was some sort of TSM play coming, and the little bit of vision that they do have definitely pays off big there.
All right, as we take a quick look at the top lane, Samux and Hilly turn their attention onto Biofrost. Bio, stand behind me, yells, takes a look at Double Lift. Quickly look at the early game objectives. Gentlemen, Team Solomid, they, yes, did get first Dragon. UOL got first Blood. And you can see in comparison to the rest of their group stages, the huge goal deficit that Unicorns tend to find themselves in. It's around about that now.
Yeah, and they're actually going to set up for a big play on top side, pushing down this turret. They do have Daisy, so it's very easy, and they engage.
Well, Flashy Engage comes out with the quickness. Daisy helping out. Double a flash and heal. Nobody's dead yet. Now Svenskeren gets the first. Shuts down Hillisang. That's a double. Looking for the triple as Samux uses the Featherstorm for time. Exile taste their fear as Svenskeren gets a third.
Unicorns of Love just not respecting teleports here. TSM, they saw everyone move to top lane. They had a ward right there. Bjergsen was on the way to the bot lane, but he had TP ready. Instantly came in.
River wards, river wards, river wards. They have paid off so big here in the early game, and that they turn the top lane into a graveyard now for Unicorns of Love. 2 failed tower dives for them now up on that top side. Meanwhile, on the bottom side, Hauntzer slowly whittling away at the turret as well.
And this actually goes back to day one. Unicorns of Love, where they went 0-2. They were trying so hard to make big plays in the early game that backfired, so they fell even further behind compared to what we normally see from the Unicorns of Love. 2 tower dives they didn't have to take. They went all in. Like here, they're spotted on this ward, and there's TP ready from the LeBlanc, and even from the Gnar if it's needed.
They have had some of the lowest warding stats of any team, North American or European, here at this tournament. And again, it gets turned around. You can see TSM, Svenskeren slipping in here to cut them off and clean up the extra kills.
And another important thing to highlight, obviously, for Unicorns of Love, they're not packing a lot of early game damage. You know, their comp doesn't have to snowball the first 10, 15 minutes. Your Ryze was sitting on a Catalyst and Tier. Your Xayah definitely needs items before she becomes a massive carry. And you have Ivan jungle. So these tower dives are really hard to execute when you don't have a lot of damage.
Yeah, and definitely more difficult when you don't actually land your skill shots and manage to burst down the appropriate targets with the limited damage you have. Team Solomid are nearly 2,000 gold ahead, just over it. And literally every prediction we had about early game, mistakes, deficits is happening again.
I gotta say, Deficio, didn't Unicorns actually even tweet you and ask you for your advice, and you said no unnecessary early aggression?
That was the thing I wanted to see from the Unicorns of Love, yes. In this game, we've seen 2 big moves, and suddenly TSM sitting with 6 kills and a 3,000 gold lead. This is why we normally don't want to see Unicorns of Love make the early aggression.
Well, now TSM do have the Rift Herald buff. They've got a 4-0 Kha'Zix. Svenskeren setting up to snowball, similar to yesterday, and they're going for the blue invade.
All right, Xerxes manages to tag blue buff, smites it down. Xerxes gets caught by the Enchanted Crystal Arrow, and Exile's here to fight. 4 members of Team Solomid making their way down. Interrupt on the Realm Warp means Exile cannot escape. That's a first for Double Lift. The rest of TSM continue to chase. Somehow Hauntzer's gone down in the bottom lane. Now we continue in the top. Double Lift gets tagged by the Featherstorm, but too many members means TSM trade 1 for 2.
Yeah, get 2 kills up here. They're feeling very confident. They can just keep fighting. Gunblade ready on Bjergsen. Svenskeren sitting with 4-0-3 on this Kha'Zix. Chachi though getting some damage on bot lane tower.
And Chachi has been, you know, a real bright spot for Unicorns of Love, continually performing. We're gonna get the replay of the top side though that we just saw the engage here. Arrow did come down, as you said, and the redemption for TSM actually buys some time for them to get off the rest of those Braum passive procs.
And Samux not able to join until now, so TSM knew we have 4v3. They already pushed that top lane first. It was just a very well coordinated play. And with that advantage, they can go for it. Bot lane, I assume Chachi knocked him into the tower.
Yeah, he actually has red buff here for this exchange as well.
Okay,
not even into the turret, just takes advantage of the mini Gnar form here. And the red buff just absolutely taking its toll.
Man, Visit Chachi. Well, remember the last 2 times these two faced off, Visit Chachi got the early lead in game 1, and it was kind of replied in kind by Hauntzer in game number 2. Team Solomid, they extend their lead even further, and they also got tower first blood, by the way, as that went down to the Herald.
The thing is, though, last time, you know, an Aurelia into a Gnar, you have the kill pressure. You're supposed to look for, you know, 1v1 kills. Gragas into Gnar, definitely not the same thing. I mean, yeah, you do have an extra advantage if you have red buff, but that solo kill definitely unexpected and should have been avoided for TSM. But really, again, great performances from Visit Chachi.
Very big for Unicorns of Love. They get something, you know. They finally got that 1 tower up in the top lane where they've been trying to dive TSM multiple times now just to secure it. Chachi also being the shining light in the bottom lane. The rest of Unicorns once again going top lane. They will be spotted by TSM's ward. I'm just going to push it out.
Let's see what Unicorns do to respond. TSM, by the way, they lost that tower after 15 minutes. They've only conceded 3 towers before 15 minutes across the 7 games that they've played. Vizicachi is now going to be under threat as Doublelift fires the ECA. This is going to catch Vizicachi. He's stunned up, and Bjergsen is on a killing spree.
TSM, they send the squad down to avenge Haunter there and take out that shining light, Deficio.
Well, with the Vizicachi down, see the rest of Unicorns of Love trying to get something going in mid lane, but at this point you're just so far down on the map as well in terms of gold, you can't really fight it. This has gone so heavy in TSM's favor that Unicorns of Love's comp will need a lot of time before it can fight.
We can't say that we're surprised. We'll continue that discussion in a moment. The quickness comes out as immediately does a redemption. Hylissang forced to run for his life. The tower is already killed, but Sven Skeren's looking for more. He's 4-0-4. UOL champion fighters not found. Featherstorm comes down. Blade Caller backwards will at least slow TSM's advance. Vizicachi doesn't have access to the explosive cast, and Hilly's forced to run for his life.
Oh, he wants
Vizicachi's on the front line, but you can't fight all of TSM. Bjergsen's on a rampage. Sven Skeren kills Daisy, and TSM get the 10th kill.
That was a really good teamfight example of zoning and the spacing being a very big issue here. In the end, after the backline gets chunked out, the front line can't move up without the threat of the damage dealers right behind him. And even though he started at full life, gets immediately taken down. Initially, though, it starts off with Biofrost expecting some aggression onto Doublelift. He's waiting over the edge. They start to turn it around here, even with the teleport coming in.
Yeah, Chachi obviously joining behind TSM at the moment. So you see Exile very low, has to back away. Same goes for Samax, but actually ended up taking all the damage before using his ulti. So TSM are feeling pretty confident most of the fight. Only really Biofrost who is low. And when they see Chachi chasing for that last kill, they can just turn around.
Lock him up, because as you said, Exile and Samix were chunked out below 50 HP, or 50% HP at the very beginning of that fight, and they're not super long range, so it's hard for them to apply that pressure.
Just such great play from Team Solomid, punishing all of the tower dives from UOL, and as TSM continue to take advantages, 404, Hex, more TSM Warrior. Gunblade's been with Bjergsen for a while. He's sitting on a boatload of gold. Doublelift's almost about to finish his Zeal item. Like, TSM, the world is their oyster right now, and they're going to set their sights on UOL's Nexus.
And you said before, Trevor, that you weren't really surprised that TSM will be this far ahead in gold. I actually personally am surprised, because I think Unicorns of Love would have been playing the way we saw the last 2 days, where they didn't go for these big plays early game, where they actually said, know what, if we can just farm even, that's what we're looking for. We know our window is after 20 minutes. They just went back and said, nah, this is first game on big stage for a final. We got to make big plays. And I think Sheepy will, of course, talk to these guys and say, we don't need to do that. You had the scaling, you had Iron. No need to go for these unnecessary risks. Just play it much slower, and it's going to be fine.
That's what best of fives are all about, refocusing in the face of adversity after you have, you know, slipped up, let's call it right now.
There's a lot of notes on Sheepy's notepad right now.
There's a big slip up on the UOL side as we get to 20 minutes, guys. 8,000 gold. And now TSM having a lot of tools to try and pull ahead. Bjergsen, no flash. Distortion comes out and manages to get the Mimic as well. But for TSM, it feels like this team composition with this significant lead should be able to just break open UOL's base, play the map a little bit more. It took a long time yesterday against G2, but I'm not expecting the same today.
Yeah, and kind of another reason why it does feel this way, and you had this feeling of it coming into it a little bit, is this has really been TSM's tournament.
Yeah.
You know, they only dropped one single game the entire time so far here, and they are definitely not looking to do so in the best of 5 either.
That's kind of thing. We've seen so many good things from them. Drafting has been solid, many different comms. Early game, as we talked about earlier, with the vision and the pressure around Bjergsen, been on point. And they've been able to rely on multiple members to perform as well. Like, look at the bottom lane, both Doublelift and Biofrost been the best AD carry and best support at this tournament. And once again, they're doing really well.
Yeah, basically unchallenged. The 5th tower of UOL fell. And TSM going to keep backing away. Just taking control of everything, stealing away UOL's jungle. Got a decent amount of vision in that left-hand quadrant. It's very early for Baron, but they can start baiting. And there you go. Worst goal difference at 20 minutes, minus 8,000 goals.
Yeah, this is definitely a rough one.
This is a warm-up game, right?
I do I do like to play the difficult game of always looking at from the team that's behind, looking at from UOL's perspective right now and trying to figure out, that avenue back into it. As even Xerxes tweeted out himself, quite a while ago, that's been getting retweeted and popularized. They always default to when they are unsure of what to do, head towards the mid lane, use their long range engage, and hope that the other team is spread out, hope that they find them in a numbers advantage. But even that right now, with all the wards of TSM and the gold lead they have, is very difficult to pull off.
And Kobe, you talked about wards a little bit earlier and how UOL weren't using theirs super effectively. Warding in UOL, well, warding in Europe has been a bit messy, but let's look at UOL more specifically. And Deficio, what do you make of these vision stats? Typical, I call it out, as a fight breaks out. Enchanted Crystal Arrow tags onto Samux. He's dropped to 50% HP. Bjergsen chunks down Hilly but doesn't get the kill. And as it stands, TSM maintain map control. And you can see wards per minute lost, wards kill per minute lost, control wards per game lost.
And this has actually been the same for Unicorns of Love in multiple years now. It's just been a way they're kind of playing the game where it is so focused on engaging for team fights more than that slow setup where you push all 3 lanes, the slow pushing minions. Everyone on Twitter, they're looking at the minimap saying it's fantastic. No, for Unicorns of Love, it's much more about just instantly find the engage. And that actually means you don't play around vision a whole lot. And obviously there's a lot of issues with that, but there's also been positives where they surprise a lot of teams with how fast they can start a team fight and suddenly win through that. In this game though, it wasn't really about vision or lacking vision on their side. It was actually them just obviously taking the wrong fights with their scaling comp.
And I think that the vision leads to taking wrong fights though. So they
I mean, they're diving a tower.
The TSM saw them coming. Right now, they're not diving anything.
No, they're not. The blast cone still doesn't save Hylissang. He manages to jump away. Ooh. The Realm Warp delivers Exile and Hilly to safety. But with Samux down, Baron becomes the objective with double mountains. This is going to fly.
All right, Xerxes is over the wall. Is he going to try and suicide in there or not even give it an attempt?
Well, Exile is there with him. Really hard to walk in the front door, though, when the enemy team is already on the Baron. And Xerxes just steps away. TSM secures the important objective to really get that inhib or the inhibs down. And at this point here, it looks almost impossible for the Unicorns of Love to win.
Giant gold lead here for TSM. Giant control of the map, and they catch the AD carry out in the very middle of that map. Arrow ends up, going through with that straight line of the blast cone, and they have their little sick escape here with the Houdini. But doesn't matter because Houdini left behind the Baron, and TSM are happy to take that prize.
Yep, no, not a whole lot left for TSM to take with their gold lead. You talked about being a little impossible for UOL. UOL's got the
Are there varying
shortest
degrees of impossibility?
I think there is.
In Europe, there is.
Yes.
It's like kind of impossible, really impossible.
Okay.
Gents, UOL have the shortest average game time because they've had a few games where they've crushed, 27-minute win, and then they've had a game where they've been crushed, 26-minute loss. We might be on track to keep this average game time relatively low from UOL. That's not impossible.
What a way to start out the series, though. I mean,
a quick one.
You could hear a pin drop in here.
Well, not anymore, you can't.
Or it's a weird sounding pin, I'm not sure.
The TSM pin.
Yeah, the TSM one.
Also, while we were chatting about that ward stats, the stats team buzzed me and informed me that Samux purchased his 6th control ward for all of Rift Rival.
Well, they're fighting.
They are indeed. This Biofrost is standing on the front line, does not care, even though there's a good knock back onto double lift. He just walks to safety, didn't even need to flash. The 5th kill for Bjergsen, so easily secured. Plucks Hylissang out from under the tower.
Well, they still didn't get that inhib turret down, so Unicorns are trying to defend, at least, in that mid lane.
There's a brush on it. How do you attack that?
No, they're getting it now.
Talk about optimism as Exile's gonna try get away. Tries to get back into his realm. Warp cannot do either. Hornsa picks up his first kill of the game.
Yeah, but they still didn't get 3 inhibs.
They didn't get 3. The only member...
I don't think anyone's going to get 3 inhibs this game. It might just be...
It might be over. The only member of TSM to not pick up a kill is Biofrost. He's got 0-0-12.
Yeah, come on, Biofrost, step it up.
Nearly 100% kill participation. And, well, TSM, they are just destroying Unicorns to open the series.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost difficult to even get excited about it. This is
These people have family. Like, UOL's family is here in the audience. Their families are watching TSM.
All right, well, Exile, he is able to flash out, but does not break the chain, so goes down as well. And TSM, as you said, easily clean up that inhibitor. They don't overextend. They don't stick around for a 26-minute Nexus kill there, or an attempt, because that could be turned around. And they're going to march it back out here, march up another line towards an inhibitor.
Again, whenever we see these kind of games as the first one in the best of 5, you know the team is already kind of thinking about, okay, next game, what are we changing? The coach is sitting backstage doing the same. So I really expect to see a much different game from Unicorns of Love in Game 2, where again, they are removing these really, really unnecessary moves in the early game. Because as we highlighted so many times, they have pure scaling in their comp.
Yeah,
they shouldn't fight.
Let's talk about that a little bit more, because this tournament has been really interesting in the effect of winning lanes and the priority that a lot of the teams have been putting on at least 2 winning lanes to help out an aggressive jungler, and using that as a means to snowball this early game.
Exactly, and we see with TSM here, after mid lane where Bjergsen dies, and it looks like, okay, now Unicorns actually have a few winning lanes. They can play around. Then the dives suddenly backfires. Doublelift gets a few kills. We see Bjergsen start taking over the game, and now we also see Chachi dying.
All right, Realm Warp finishes, and just to watch Hornser walk away, wave goodbye. So that wasn't very nice, friend. And Hornser and Bjergsen take down Visit Chachi. 14 kills to 2, 55,000 to 39,500. And yes, Svenskeren gets tagged and chunked, and he's able to flash away to safety. Enchanted Crystal Arrow hits the most important target in the fight, Samux. While that happens, Exile's chunked down. Daisy gets a knock-up though at least, and this could be some kills back. Shut down onto Doublelift. Inhibitor tower goes down as Svenskeren gets a couple of hits. Remember, they haven't got 3 inhibs yet.
Exactly.
As TSM are thwarted on this siege.
I mean, the fact they actually walked down there. Oh, Bjergsen.
All right, Bjergsen's going to find at least 1 onto Samux. Hilly and Xerxes trying to run them down.
There's no damage there, though.
There's no one to kill anyone. Biofrost and Bjergsen turn it back around. Hit him with a chair. Hillesang is going to dash away to safety. And Chachi's being run down. Hornser manages to get a hop, get the hyper, get the speed boost and a boomerang. As Hilly goes down in the background, that weird sounding pin was making noises again as TSM are just padding their stats.
Keep running, Chachi. Get all the plants as well.
I saw the video.
Take them away from them.
I saw the video yesterday. TSM were not dancing under the nexus of G2. They were waiting for Trick to kill Biofrost. Now it's the other way around. TSM are waiting to kill as many UOL members as possible.
Died in the end.
That flash.
That flash. TSM will get their second inhib.
Or what you're telling me is,
no.
Oh no, inhibitor secured. So we live to fight another day.
Unicorns just need to do this for another 20 minutes, and then they're right back in the game.
Well, there's no Anivia for wave clear here. And TSM have got the entire map under their control. If they really need another Baron, it's up in a minute, and they can pick that one up.
But TSM can't farm any super minions.
Oh.
Unicorns can.
Oh, advantage Unicorns of Love. No, not really. I tried to deliver that as empathetically as I could.
I'm glad you tried.
All right, well, here comes that number 2 as far as the inhibitor kills for TSM. You are looking for, I think they can just stick around inside the base, pick up number 3. If you stay around long enough with these extra minions, you'll eventually be able to, claim those Nexus turrets by sheer force.
Well, Exile gets tagged by the Enchanted Crystal Arrow. Hornser gets a very good knockback. Biofrost gets his first kill of the game, but Samux shuts down Hornser. It's a 1-for-2 so far. Samux and Exile still alive. Running for their life. Correction, Samux and Hilly still alive. And they manage to get the root down onto Bjergsen. Not a lot of follow-up. Featherstorm goes out. Blade Caller, I think, is still on cooldown. Svenskeren and the rest of TSM dash in forward. Samux stays alive a few seconds longer. Xerxes' shields are burned through. The double lane is down. Xerxes runs for his life. TSM diving under the tower. Ace the Unicorns. Destroy the Nexus turrets. And while they did not get 3 inhibitors, TSM dominate Unicorns in game number 1.
Yeah, and this game was just decided at these 2 tower dives where Unicorns of Love went aggressive. They got punished by TSM. Great reactions from TSM, obviously. Had the vision, they saw them, had TP ready from someone like Bjergsen. And they came and they got so many kills from it and used that then to completely take over the game.
What a statement game here for TSM in the opener of the finals. Absolutely crushing Unicorns of Love.
And you take that from yesterday's game where TSM took 50 minutes to close out against G2. Admittedly, the compositions had a lot to do with that. Perks' Talia slowing things down, but for TSM, 30 minutes. UOL's average game time, I think, was 32:08. Actually beat that by a full 2 minutes. That'll keep bringing that average down.
Keep getting it down.
And you know what? Expectations, man. TSM were the favorites. UOL can fall behind early. Now, how those expectations came true was different.
Yeah.
But still very much the same.
I mean, true, in the end, people knew that TSM would win the early game, but Unicorns of Love, they got to change up here for second game because they can't fall that far behind.
Well, they have side selection. Is Pix and Ban something where they can spend some time to think about it, or do you purely think it's going to be decision-making in what they have?
I think it's much more on the decision-making, because even though you can switch up the champions, it seems like they're very set in the style, so it'll be different pieces in the same, game plan.
Well, let's see what Unicorns decide to do and how they come back to this game. TSM came out with a dominant performance in game one. Let's send it to the analyst desk for a closer look.
Thank you very much, guys. Indeed, TSM with a masterclass in snowballing a win, or to the win, rather, over the Unicorns of Love in this series. And I immediately want to take a look at the turret dives very early on in the game that really tilted it in TSM's favor.
So this is a very classic Unicorns of Love move. They know they have the losing 2v2. They know they're eventually going to lose the tower bot. So they try and move up to the top side to trade towers. And instead, they go for an unnecessary dive, which TSM have already been able to respond to. And it was just poorly coordinated, in which they send 4 members up. They cannot juggle the turret aggro properly. They end up losing their AD carry. And not only does this give a huge amount of farm and experience over to Doublelift, but you've also just shut down the early game plan that UOL had set up for themselves.
In terms of decision making, as Kobe was talking about, was it wrong to try and go for this dive at this moment in time? Obviously, taking turret aggro was wrong, but what about the initial decision?
I mean, I think the initial decision is fine if you can execute it properly, right? Like, I think some of the people tanking maybe could have taken an additional shot. That could have protected their AD carry, which allows him to get the kills, right? But when you mess up a dive like that, it goes so wrong so fast.
Yeah, the next dive is one that was not the right decision.
Not the right decision, and maybe also not the right execution. A very good counterplay by TSM. What makes the difference here?
Biofrost makes a difference in this one. He plays it so well with Braum, spacing himself from Doublelift, using his shield at exactly the right time, and that buys the time for Bjergsen to teleport into the turret and Svenskeren to come from the back end, making it a 4v4 under TSM's turret, which they easily win.
And I think Biofrost actually can be easily overlooked in this game. Like, I actually think he carried a lot of the fights in this game. He used his shield so incredibly well, and even just the little thing of spreading out to actually not get CC'd by the Rakan coming in so he can use his shield at the perfect time delays so much on that turret dive. And throughout the whole game, like, he was always able to find the correct positioning, protect his carries, and I think Biofrost actually played incredibly well.
And I want to also pay homage to how well TSM were always respecting the plays that Unicorns of Love were trying to make, because it felt like every single time one teleport of the two was always coming in at just the right time. Svenskeren was always in position to answer any kind of play that the Unicorns of Love were trying to make. And I just feel like that this time round, TSM, they stole the playbook from the Unicorns of Love. They're like, oh, okay, at this point in the game, they're going to do this. All we have to do is this. And they answered it every time.
Yeah, they counterplayed really, really well. How much in these dives did the underwarding by Unicorns of Love also do them a very high disservice?
Yeah, I mean, that's always the case, but generally if you're sending the whole team to a spot, you're hoping that you're at least going to be able to win the fight, and I think that's a lot of how Unicorns plays, but I felt TSM was just very organized and communicated very well in this game. Like, they were incredibly ready for the engages. Like, the swiftness in which Biofrost Braum would always jump in as soon as the Rakan engage came in was incredibly fast, and it never really let UOL get the jump on a fight.
And I want to emphasize the fact that with UOL's composition, like, the lane swap makes sense, right? Because if they're already going to lose their bot lane tower eventually, and they have Gragas in a losing matchup too, the best thing to do is just open up the map, so then it's easier to scale up with the composition. They have a comp that is about team fighting, something that they're well known for, and something that was highlighted a lot in the cast is the fact that they tried to be too proactive in the early game when they just didn't need to, and that is exactly where TSM were able to effectively shut them down.
And sprinkled throughout the entire game, someone we cannot undervalue either, the arrows by Doublelift. We're going to take a look at a montage brought to you by Acer, because this has been so consistent throughout the entire tournament on this Ashe. I don't know if this is ban-worthy, would you say, or pick away, but it has such a big influence on these games.
I mean, it really does, but the fact of the matter is TSM has shown proficiency on so many different champions now. Like, how can you justify, you know, banning away the Ashe when then you then maybe can't ban Caitlyn and things like that? He's just been playing incredibly well, period. But yeah, he's super effective on the Ashe, even going for the Estus Reaver build, so he's getting more and more of these arrows. And when you're this accurate with them, who can blame him?
And maybe I'm sounding like a broken record, but again, the underwarding and the fact that TSM has better warding and they know where they're going to hit them and they know that they can get their enemies is just coming to bite Unicorns of Love in the butt over and over again.
Yeah, and back in my day, mid laners took cleanse against Ashe, especially when they're up against LeBlanc. So when that arrow hit from bottom lane for a 3.5-second stun, like, let's not forget that Bjergsen was first blooded by Exile's Rise, but then the Ashe actually is the one who turned that around. So very strong play by Doublelift on Ashe, but I don't even think it's his top 2 champion, right? I think Caitlyn and Triss can both be better.
And I love how proactive Doublelift was with those arrows, because I just remember the C9 versus UOL where they picked Ashe, and I don't even remember how many Ashe arrows there were in that game because it just wasn't utilized. Seeing that level of just playmaking from the side of TSM, the fact that they see an opportunity and they go for it, is just so encouraging for the squad of TSM.
It really is, but it feels like for UOL, you know, we talked about, hey, what do people want to see from them? Playing slowly, scaling up, going for team fights, and it felt like they had been moving towards that in the later stage of the group stages. You know, for Exile, hey, like, you don't have to do anything crazy. Go down a little bit of CS, lose gracefully, and then you can be effective in your strength. But it feels like they threw that completely out the window and went the other way, and it completely backfired.
I think that's a great point, because through the group stage, we saw them growing from day 1 to 2 to 3 and getting more slower. And this is kind of a new page, a blank page, a fresh best of 5. They're excited and they pull the trigger all the time. So is it just as simple as tell them, hey, don't make that second dive when that first one failed and wait it out? Or is that something in the identity of the Unicorns that cannot be kind of remedied in this matchup?
I will say that for the Unicorns, they are very receptive to feedback. When their coach, Sheepy, says to them, okay, guys, you really need to slow down, they are a team that will take that on board, and they recognize that. And we saw the amount of growth that they made from day 1 to day 2. So I do feel confident that they will be able to adapt in this best of 5 series, but I still feel that TSM will continue to adapt as well. And seeing as they've already got UOL's number, I think it's going to be an extra challenge for UOL to catch up.
The number is 8,000 up at 20 minutes.
To be fair, it's like it's not like going for dives is necessarily bad. It's just high risk, high reward. And when it fails, it's going to fail spectacularly. So had they pulled that off, maybe they snowball the game, and we're talking, you know, about a different story here. But they didn't, and I don't think it's necessarily their strength.
Oh, super impressive from the side of TSM. They got first blood here in this series. We'll see if the Unicorns of Love can strike back when we return.
Top side, and a lot of praise to TSM in the early vision.
All right, Rune Prison comes out. Triggersy flashed away from. Not done yet. Bjergsen gives up first blood to Exile. Now Svenskeren gets the first. Shuts down Hylissang. That's a double. Looking for the triple as Samix uses the Featherstorm for time. Exile taste their fear.
Oh, Bjergsen.
All right, Bjergsen's going to find at least one onto Samix. Hilly and Xerxes trying to run them down.
There's no damage there, though.
There's no one to kill anyone. Dash in forward. Samix stays alive a few seconds longer. Xerxes' shields are burned through. The double lane is down. Xerxes runs for his life. TSM diving under the tower. Ace the Unicorns.